The Board of Trustees of the Lamar Consolidated Independent School District is called to order at 5:30 p.m. This is a special board meeting being held on January 23rd, 2024. We have a quorum with all members present. Please join me in a moment of silence to observe as you feel appropriate. Please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance and the pledge to the Texas flag. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag.
I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas,
one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you. Please be seated.
All right, good evening, everyone. We will have first Ms. Cole Hamilton come up to the microphone to talk about our strategic planning committee's role and process. Mr. Welch is the committee chair, so Mr. Welch, if you'd like to start that off, you can, or just add to discussion whenever you like to.
Yeah, well, Lamar has a 5-year plan that's 5 years old. So we have put a board committee together to come up with a new 5-year plan. It could either be a refresh of the current plan, or it can be, a plan from scratch. And the 3 committee members decided that we should probably do a plan from scratch since we're such a fast-growing district. And so we had the first meeting last Friday evening.
Nice. We tag teamed on this, Trustee Welch. Thank you for that. Trustees, good evening, Madam President, Trustees, Dr. Nivens. I am super excited to stand before you to present something different. And so we are here tonight to talk about strategic planning, specifically the committee's role and then the process. So as you know, strategic plan is a comprehensive document. It outlines our direction, our goals, our action steps over whatever defined period the Board of Trustees sees fit. It's essentially our roadmap, and it usually includes vision, mission, goals, objectives, and strategies. And as Trustee Welch stated earlier, our current strategic plan is a 5-year plan, and we are nearing the end of it. The process last time was started in the fall of 2018, and the board was presented a plan in the spring of 2019. And so since we are at the conclusion of the 5-year plan, it is time for us to form our board strategic planning committee, which is chaired by Trustee Welch. Just for the awareness of everyone else, the specific duties of this committee involve creating the request for qualifications. We often call that the RFQ. And this is how we advertise our need to potential vendors. The committee will create a rubric by which we grade and assess the applications we receive. The committee will review the application submissions, and the committee will present a ranking or recommendation to the board, and that's what Trustee Welch was alluding to. Trustees, the board will need to decide how the committee should proceed. And so just to give you some next steps before you enter your discussion phase, you will discuss the process, and of course we can refine as needed. The committee did have their initial meeting, and right now they're in the process of reviewing the content, and they're going to follow up with additional ideas and edits to the draft RFQ that we have right now. The committee is also charged with finalizing the overall timeline, and we will share updates with the board in the board update. And so at this time, we have created a high-level initial timeline starting the RFQ process this February with the intent to start the work this fall and have it completed in the spring of 2025 for a fall 2025 rollout. Completed, yes, for a fall 2025 rollout. At this time, trustees, you can discuss amongst yourselves anything related to strategic planning or even to provide guidance regarding how the committee should proceed, and I can take some notes.
Since we had the meeting Friday night, I have been in communication with friends of mine on the Fort Bend ISD board and the Katy board, and I've learned that they're both going through the same thing right now as well. And Katy, what they have done is they had a plan that expired, quote unquote expired in 2022, and they did a 2-year refresh, and they're actually going through a 2-year refresh right now. But the idea is in 2 years, they'll do a complete overhaul of it. One of the things that was a little concerning to me when we met the other night was the cost. there are firms out there that help organizations such as ours form a vision and a plan. And one of us asked the administration if they thought the cost would be about $10,000, and that was met with laughter. So the cost, I think the estimated cost is somewhere between 50,000 and up, is it? That's
Yes, sir, it could be upwards that, yeah, or even more than that.
depending on what we're asking the company to do.
Right, depending on the comprehensive report and how comprehensive the board would like to go down.
Yeah. So I think that we should kind of give our thoughts and opinions on this whole thing.
Well, that was my main concern was cost, because the last time we had Holdsworth that came in and helped us do everything, so we did not have a cost. They ran all the meetings, and then they ran the strategic workshops that came to us. So I would like to see a breakdown of, if we want to start from scratch, just how much something like this would cost, or would it behoove us to do something like you said Katie did and move forward using some of what we have, maybe just tweaking some things and see if we could tweak it to make it work for us for another 2 years. But then again, kicking the can down the road, things just get more expensive. So you just have to weigh both sides. But yeah, I would like to see a cost breakdown. If we have something good now, I hate to spend money where we don't need to.
The RFQ process that the committee is going through will dictate that, actually, and so that's why we called them together, is to come in. So right now they're and so the other trustees on the committee are Trustee Box and Vice President Lambert, and so what we asked them to do is go, and we have a sample RFQ that we have in our school system that Mr. Langston gave us, and so there was some red lining in there that we can change, and there was some black lining that we cannot change for legal purposes. And so we asked the committee to go back and just come up with bullet points on what they would like to see happen during this process. And then we'll get those bullet points, and then we'll get that back to Mr. Langston. He can draft up the entire RFQ, and then we'll take that back to the committee to make sure that they're good with that. And so that's gonna drive the services that we're asking. And so if the board would like to see a smaller project, then we have to make sure we say that in the RFQ, and then we can put that out there for a bid. We can see what comes back. If it's good for the board, then we can move forward. If it's not good for the board, we can readjust the RFQ, take it back to put it back on the market, and then do something that way. So the RFQ is what's going to drive the request for qualifications. Is what I mean by RFQ. That's going to drive everything that we're gonna ask this firm to do. And so really, you know, if the board would like to move forward with, you know, a refresh, then as we talk about that in our one-on-ones, I'd like you to just kind of give me that input, and then I can take that input back to Trustee Welch, and then we could talk with the committee about it. And so we could do that first and then go back, but we just know that it'll push the timeline back. But at the end of the day, we are wanting to start, do the summer slide, we want to start in August. We want that firm to be in the district, starting their meetings in August. And so we could take this time between now and August, do the RFQ, do all the vetting process, interviews, all those things. Then that firm will come back and talk to the entire board sometime in May or June and say, here's the exact process we'll go through. The board will approve that, and then we'll let summer slide hit us. And then in August, we can hit the ground running and have a product ready during the year.
So are you saying that depending upon what we want to do drives the RFQ?
Yes.
So if we want to do a complete refresh or just a?
Yes.
So it drives what the RFQ would look like?
The RFQ would drive that. So if the board
Okay.
says we want to do a complete refresh, then the RFQ would say we want to do a complete refresh, and this is everything we want to see happen. And then that would drive the price. If the board says we want to do us overhaul, if we want to do a 2-year refresh, then of course the criteria and what we're asking for wouldn't be as much. So then that would drive the price. And so then when they send back our packets, they send back the packets and they all say, you know, Nivis Consulting, we can do everything you ask us for $10,000. Wells Consulting says we can do everything you ask us for $20,000. And then we have a rubric that they will grade, and then they bring those committees in and interview them. And then so also what I need the board to decide is, would you like the committee to bring the top 3 firms to the entire board, or would you like them to host all the interviews and bring the top one firm to the board, and then the entire board votes on one firm? And so that's what this board, it's not an action item tonight, but that's also what you have to decide is the direction of the committee and how many firms you would like them to bring forward. But first off is the scope of the work, and then secondly is how many firms to bring forward.
Dr. Nivens, if we were to decide to go, as a full board, to do a refresh, is that something, because I know I'm anticipating the questions that I might get, is that something the administration can handle with the personnel as far as possibly doing some like community meetings and kind of gauging the public's, where the public's at on that? Is that, do we have enough personnel to handle those kind of things?
No, we don't. We can handle it. Now, I'm looking at a young lady right in front of me who can do that. I don't want to say her name too loud, but I know she has other, she's also, you know, hosting ABC meetings, and some of those committees are 100 people each. And so, Ms. Cole Hamilton, I have full faith in her abilities to be able to have that conversation. She does that. She can do that. And she does it for districts our size, and so she can do that. But I want to be cautious on, you know, stretching her too far after this ABC process. So after we do the ABCs, if the board says they would like us to do an internal refresh and we do it, then what I would have to do is just make sure she has the time and space to be able to do that. But we knowing that wouldn't start till sometime in August, and then, yeah. But I have confidence that she can get that done with her team. Sorry.
But whether or not we do a refresh or we start from scratch, it is something that we want the community to be involved in and give their, you know, what's important to our community and our district. What are things that you feel like our board should be focusing on moving forward with LCISD? So either way, we would be getting community feedback and making changes based on that.
Yeah, and one thing we did talk about in that meeting is the community feedback is our staff as well and our teachers, and make sure we hear our teachers' voices and make sure that what they say, we take that as well. So that's a good point.
I'd like to call an audible right quick. Can we put the strategic plan website up right quick, please?
Yeah, when we did this 5 years ago, we had 10 meetings with the community, and I know they met with all the different areas of our, you know, SPED, and everybody got to have input. And then they took all the information and brought it up to us. So if we did start from scratch and we hired with RFQ, would they be running then the meetings and not us?
They would. So, Ms. Hamilton, you can briefly talk through what's all on that page, because this is what an entire new strategic plan would look like with meeting notes and everything.
So this landing page on our website shows the overall process, the number of listening tours. In each document, there's presentations, there's agendas, there's notes, and this captures all the various meetings that were had, the presentations, the different groups, and it's a really good resource. You can do a deep dive. Dr. Jones, could you even click on the orange button, the focus team reading materials? This is the cadre of all, and everything's hyperlinked, of all the reading materials committee members had access to. And typically, your strategic plan facilitator would help to create these documents, help them have them housed. Dr. Jones, could you go back for me, please? Can you scroll up a little bit? Click the listening tour for me, please, sir. And you're talking to hundreds of people. And so what the external group does is help to synthesize all that and put it like in an executive summary. And this right here is just the overview of what they did, explaining when the listening tours will start. Can you scroll down a little bit so you can see the number of stakeholders they talk to and the level of engagement? And then after every meeting, just being really transparent about what took place, what were the action items, what were the goals. And then Dr. Jones, if you could go all the way back and just click on like the actual strat plan on the far left side, and there you go, right there. And scroll down. And that's a summary, but the booklet right there is the end product, essentially, is what we will be creating with our community.
And so I want to emphasize that the strategic plan is the what, but not the how.
Right.
And so if we say what we want to do, then we have highly qualified teachers in the classroom, librarians, nurses, and all those folks that say how we're going to get there. And so the strategic plan is a broad vision for the community to say this is what we want Lamar CISD to look like in the next 5 years. And so then it's administration's purpose and staff's purpose to build a roadmap to how we get there. And so then also from this strategic plan will come board goals. And so this is a community document, have community goals that we talk about, what we want to see our district look like in 5 years. Then the board goals will derive from that, and then superintendent goals from that, and then district goals from that to make sure everything is vertically aligned and we're all working towards the same goals that our community and our staff and our students have set for the entire district. And so one thing we said was, we would have a focus group of staff members, but also some districts do and some districts don't. But what we would do is have also a group of students that we would talk to about, what they want to see their school system look like as well. And so all those, that's the whole overall refresh, or we can pick components of that. Is really, it's a roadmap to whatever the board wants to do. There's no playbook. It's a blank canvas.
And that's what the committee discussed last week, the ability to truly design what you all want to see. And Trustee Lambert, you even shared wanting to ensure that we engage with the nonprofit community, and that could be a focus group. Our clergy could be a focus group. We could have a higher ed. I mean, it can be as big or as small as this board desires.
So in the meantime, trustees, if you would be thinking about that, and as we have our one-on-one conversations, I'd like to follow up with you on that and see what your thoughts are about it, and then I can correlate that data, and I can get it to Trustee Welch, and then the committee can talk through more what the board's vision is for that, and then we can move forward. All right, next we have our demographers report, and so I have Mr. Buchanan coming to the podium to introduce on the demographers. One thing I want to preface this by saying is that now we're going to have these as a quarterly update. We used to get them annually, so now we have them quarterly to make sure we can stay on top of new development that's moving faster than we thought or slower than we thought. And so I'm really excited for the board to hear this information. And so you hear some terms also that will be described as that we haven't heard before. And so I think it's going to be very interesting. And so we're ready. Mr. Buchanan?
Good evening, Board of Trustees and Dr. Nivens. Tonight, we have our demographer here. It's Bob Templeton with Zonda Education, and he's going to be giving our annual demographer report for you.
Well, thank you, Board President, board members, Dr. Nivens. It is my pleasure to be with you this afternoon. A little background, I've been doing demographics and planning for over 25 years in the state of Texas. I started in the Dallas-Fort Worth area with the Keller School District. At that time, they were one of the fastest growing school districts in the state of Texas. I developed a methodology of really diving into housing data. And at that time, we were buying housing data from a localized research firm that was doing housing research for builders, developers. I turned that into information that we used to help do the enrollment projections for the Keller School District. And then word spread, and then neighboring school districts began to ask me to help them. Since that time, we were purchased by a national housing research firm, which is Zonda. Zonda is a national research firm that works with builders, developers, lending institutions, building product developers, and they have offices across the country and are literally tracking about 85% of all of the single-family construction across the country. They use some amazing technology to help gather that. That's been the really cool thing for me, doing this over 25 years, when we had to gather that data manually through building permits and those reports. And now it's being fed by satellite imagery into our system that literally is getting updated every month. And I can show you that resource that we have. It's really cool. It's being fed by 6 different satellites. And now our software is learning as it's going. It's spotting foundations, and it recognizes a single-family foundation. It recognizes the framing, the roofing. It recognizes multifamily pads, commercial pads. It's kind of good and scary at the same time because it is flying over and gathering this data literally on a regular, very regular basis. I'm supported by a team of 12. We have 3 advisors that perform the role that I perform, working with school districts. We have a GIS staff group of about 3 employees. We have researchers that take that data and fine-tune it. So we don't just rely on the data. We still make calls to the cities. We make calls to planning departments. We're still talking to builders, developers, and getting that personal hands-on, because we also understand there's gaps that sometimes take place. So we then take this data and produce a quarterly report. So we refine it, produce the quarterly report. One thing that's a little different about our methodology is you may have seen low, mid, high forecasts. We do a one good forecast, but we tweak that number each quarter as we see the market changes. You can imagine how different the situation is from a year and a half ago. In the latter part of 2021, interest rates were at historic lows, 3%. Now where are they? They're in that mid 6 to 7 range. They're likely going to stay in that range because we're still dealing with some inflationary challenges. We have a national economist on staff that's been on CNN. She's been to the White House. Her name is Allie Wolf, great person to follow. And so we have resources that I think really put us in a really good spot. So I'll touch on the big picture. We kind of go big picture, what's going on economically. You can see this is the unemployment rates for the Houston region. The purple line is the Houston MSA's unemployment rate. You can spot that spike from the pandemic, which was never seen. We've never seen anything like that. It shot up to over 13%, and then it improved pretty significantly, pretty quickly. Now that unemployment rate as of September was right at 4%, which is still really good. That's a relatively low unemployment rate. I will say we're starting to see some softening in the turnover in the labor market. The last 2 years have also been known as the Great Resignation because there was tremendous turnover. That's kind of settling, so we've seen that settle. We're also continuing to see very strong population growth continue to come into Texas. In fact, it's Dallas-Fort Worth, it's Houston, Austin, San Antonio, the 4 big regions in the state continuing to see very strong population growth because we're still seeing job growth. Now, one of the neat things that we do, which is we look at the census data and we also look at the American Community Survey data. We're now starting to really recognize what's happening with mobility and what's happening with choice. This is our early looks at how we're trying to help school districts understand how much of the share of the school-age population are you capturing. So this is new data that we're just now starting to report to our school districts. I've seen this on about 10 of our clients right now, and I can tell you out of the 10 that I've seen, this is the highest capture rate of those 10 that I've produced this information for. Most of them have seen a drop from that 2020 capture rate to the 2023 capture rate. It's dropping because of the increase in homeschool enrollment. It's also dropping because of what's happening with charter school enrollments, but your share has stayed right at 82%. Most of ours have seen a drop between about the high 70s down to the low 70s. We've seen about a 5% drop in share in that 3-year period. So pretty significant of the changes that we're seeing related to share. How do we do that? We look at that census data. We compare it to your enrollment to give us that. We don't have a good way to capture homeschool enrollment, unfortunately. Homeschool is not required to report to TEA. We do interviews with the Texas Homeschool Association, and what they're telling us with their data is on their membership. Now, not all homeschool families choose to join the Homeschool Association, the Texas Association, but they've tripled in their membership in the last 3 years. So we do know that the homeschool enrollment is the biggest factor related to the changes that we've seen in public school enrollment. It's also charter school expansion. This is the single-family data for the entire Houston region. The purple line is the annualized single-family start rate. The turquoise line is the annualized closing rate. You can see prior to the pandemic, the starts and closings stayed very close together. The builders were able to get homes finished rather quickly. There weren't supply chain challenges. Labor supply was in pretty good shape. They were able to build those homes in about a 3 to 4 month period, so we didn't see any real buildup in inventory. With the pandemic, we saw the separation of starts and closings. That gap was caused by supply chain challenges and some labor issues. Now, you'll see that it peaked in 2021. That's when that annualized start rate got to about 43,000, second highest in the country. So there's only one other city region that's building more single-family homes than Houston, and it's Dallas-Fort Worth. Third place is a distant third. Really, it's Dallas-Fort Worth, it's Houston, then it's Austin, San Antonio, building the most homes of the major cities in the country. Now, you'll notice the start rate really started to drop. That drop occurred when the Fed started raising the interest rates. So there was a direct correlation between what happened there. There was some shock between that 3% interest rate to then it lifting up to that 6.5, 7%. Now, the good news is we've seen that start rate turn. So it's turned back up. We're also seeing the closings now. We've got a very healthy supply. We don't have an excessive amount of finished vacant inventory out there. So the builders are able to do some things to help by buying down the interest rates, offering some concessions, making it a little more affordable for those younger families that are trying to get into single family. We're actually seeing the new single family portion of the total home sales has increased pretty significantly because there's a shortage of supply of existing homes, because many of the current homeowners have mortgages. They took advantage of those really good interest rates. So they have interest rates in that 3 to 4% range. So now they're sitting on the sidelines instead of looking to either buy the bigger home or move to a different home in a different area. That's creating a shortage of supply. Now, on the multifamily side, again, this is multifamily data for the entire Houston region. The blue bars represent the occupancy rates. You can see how it peaked in the latter part of 2021 when the occupancy rates were approaching 92.4%, and then they began to gradually drop in the occupancy rates. As of the fall, they were down at about just above 88.7%. The reason the occupancy rates have dropped so much is because we've added so many multifamily units. We've added about 21,000 multifamily units during that last year. You'll also notice the percentage offering concessions has increased to about 28%. Those are discounts on deposits, discounts on first month's rents, trying to get those occupancies back up. It is slightly softening the escalation in the rent rates. So overall, housing cost is starting to soften. Now, we have this data for the entire Houston region. This is a ranking report based on annualized closings. I'm sure this is not a surprise to you, but you're number one in the Houston region based on annual single-family closings. And the second district is Conroe, a distant second, 4,100 annual single-family closings. The start rate has softened just a little bit because of those rising interest rates. Inventory represents new homes that are under construction and finished vacant. That's the inventory number. VDL stands for vacant developed lots. Those are lots that are on the ground, ready for builders to build on. And the future lots are concept plans, future phases of existing developments. It is information that's starting in the platting process, information that we have knowledge on from an interview with a developer. So you've got 37,000. That's the second highest in the Houston region. Really what that tells us is you're still going to be growing for a long time. And that doesn't even include the ag land that hasn't started the planning processes. So this is looking at information where we have information about developments and future phases to give us those numbers. We track it every quarter. The starts are on the left side of the table. The closings are on the right side. You can see in the second and third quarters, starts were back up to about 1,200, 1,300. I just got the fourth quarter data yesterday. I looked it up. We had over 1,000 starts in Lamar ISD in the fourth quarter. So again, it's now looking like your start rate is going to click back up to about 4,000, 37 to 4,000 single-family homes per year. We break it down by elementary attendance zone. The red cell is the largest, number one, highest activity for that category. The green is the second highest category. The kind of red color is the third highest category. What is really striking to me about this information is you have elementary zones that are fast growth, that are building 100 to 300 homes a year. That would be fast growth. Those are zones that are seeing significant growth. Then you have zones that I call hypergrowth. Hypergrowth are those zones that are in that, 400 to 700 range. We work with primarily fast growth districts. We work with, Prosper. We work with Northwest, and in the San Antonio area, it's Comal. Comal would have a similar pattern to you, because they're a very large geographic district. They're approaching 600 square miles is the geography of their district. They also have this type of spread in their growth. So you're really in rare company in terms of fast growth. We're a member of the Fast Growth Coalition. We see this data. There's really only a handful of districts that are in this category. Here's the map of your district, your current elementary attendance zones. The green shaded areas are active subdivisions that are building single-family homes. The yellow shaded areas are the futures. The red outlines these are areas where development activity, new lots, the bulldozers are there. They're getting new lots ready for the areas that have a red outline. You have 87 actively building subdivisions. You have 33 future subdivisions. You have groundwork underway on 3,400 lots. The developers did not slow down when the interest rate started to go up. There was really no change of pace for them. There was a little bit of concern and hesitancy with the builders when the interest rates first started going up, but now the interest rates have kind of settled in at that 6 to 7% range. And when you look back over the last 30 years of interest rates, a 6% interest rate is not historically crazy high. It feels high because of where we were a couple of years ago, but if you look back 10 years ago, this is where we were. Now, this is the multifamily picture. I know it's a little hard to see, but we do have data on the specifics on these areas. The purple shaded areas are the multifamily projects that are under construction. The turquoise shaded areas are the multifamily that are in the planning stages. We have 12 multifamily projects in the planning stages, which represents about 3,000 units. We've got 1,800 multifamily units currently under construction in about 5 different areas. One of the new product of multifamily that we're seeing is single family for rent. And we're seeing they look on the surface like a single family subdivision, but those homes are not going to be for sale and they're going to stay rental. We're seeing this really spreading across our clients. It's this new group, the young millennial group, that it's also lifestyle choices where they want a single-family home, but they don't want that long-term obligation. They want the flexibility. And so we're seeing the single-family for rent really surging in our clients. I'm going to touch on some of the highlights. I'm not going to go through all of them. You have so many. Again, you'll notice that little bubble. That's the satellite image from January the 10th. I have this satellite imagery for your entire district for January the 10th. It's literally getting updated every month, and we use that to help us with the research. Of course, Tamaron, you're well aware, I think it's your fastest growing, #1 producing master plan community, over 3,200 total lots. 110 homes under construction during the third quarter. They had about 73 homes in inventory, finished vacant. D.R. Horton community, that price point, I'd say it's really 300 to 400,000. When we did the geocode this fall, we had 1,904 students that resided in Tamaron, which was producing a yield of about 0.63 students per home. We do this for about 80 school districts in Texas. I have data on over 2 million students where we have geocoded 2 million records this year. So I have yield data for D.R. Horton for 300 of their subdivisions. And I have it for Lennar. I have it for David Weekley. We have it for all the builders. What we see is those yields range. They're not a static yield. They literally are changing every year. They tend to ebb and flow between about 0.4 on the low side. It all depends on the price point, the location, the amenities, the location to schools. All those things definitely come into play. On the high side, it tends to be around 0.8 to 0.9. We don't typically see yields that are above 1, but they will range from 0.4 to 0.8. Jordan Ranch, about 2,800 total lots, 190 homes under construction, 54 in inventory. There's about 843 students that reside in Jordan Ranch, producing a yield of about 0.57. Emberley, 2,478 total lots, 56 homes under construction. Price point, I'd say upper 200s to about 375. You can see the satellite image from January the 10th. You can see the concrete streets are in their future section. So they're really positioning to keep going at a very good rate for several more months. Miller's Pond, 398 total lots, 61 homes under construction. Lennar Homes in the mid-200s to upper 400s. You can see the satellite imagery there. To the north there, we've got Miller's Pass, a little smaller infill development. They're building all 50 of those homes, 50 homes under construction. That's again Lennar and MI Homes, and those price points are mid-200s to a little over 300,000. Sorrento, 484 total lots, 25 homes under construction. It's a D.R. Horton community again, close to 300 to mid-300s for homes in Sorrento. D.R. Horton is the largest builder in the country. They are based in Texas, so we see them in just about all the school districts that we work with. That was the highlights. In your book, you have the details of all of the subdivision activity. We have the details broken out by quarter, so you can see how those subdivisions have historically been building. And there's a lot of those subdivisions that are built out, but they're still in there, so you can see generally some of those that have zeros, those were built out a few years ago. Quick look at your enrollment history.
Just a second, Bob.
Yes.
Let's pause for a second for any kind of questions we may have about what we just looked at, the satellite images and the neighborhoods coming up. You can go back a couple of slides. Let's talk through. Trustees, y'all have any questions about?
Thank you.
About those, or any particular, because he has, what he said, he has the highlights, but he also has some other images of other neighborhoods that are coming up. If you have anything on top of your head that you can think about and ask, he can pull that up now and ask.
Thank you, Dr. Nivens. I get on a roll, and I just start really going.
Yeah, but this is a workshop, and so the workshop is for discussion and questions and all those things, and just really discovery of information. And so as you're thinking through that, Mr. Timber said a couple things, and I don't want to go by anyone's head, is that one thing, you know, he used the term hypergrowth. And so, you know, in certain aspects of our district, Lamar CISD is considered to be a hypergrowth school district. So that's faster than fast growth. As a matter of fact, when we had our conversation the other day, you said we were, how many districts growing like fast?
Oh, there may be three.
Yeah.
It's northwest up in the Dallas-Fort Worth.
No, I
area.
mean, you said we are the combination of like three growth.
Yes. Oh, no, you're more than one district, really. It feels like you're about really like 4 districts in terms of your size and where the growth is happening. And so a lot of our fast growth districts might be 40 to 50 square miles. And they're building 1,500 homes a year. And that's fast growth for that size of a district. Well, you're the equivalent of 3 to 4 of those.
And so as we start to talk about, you know, future planning, you know, one thing Ms. Hamilton and her team talked about was making sure that we start using the term, in some parts of our district, we are a hyper-growth school system. And so fast growth has one connotation, but hyper-growth has a whole different one. Because people need to understand that we have more houses and more people coming than, you know, tax rate and building supplies, all that stuff can keep up with. And so we are in rare company, as he said. So does anyone have any questions about any other neighborhoods that he didn't talk about?
Well, there is on 359 across from where you had Bentley. The Sorrento has 484 homes. Just across the street from that is Candela. And they're just moving further south.
Yes.
I see you have it highlighted, it's in yellow.
Yes.
But I don't know if you know off the top of your head how many homes are coming in there, because those are all gonna feed into Bentley, because there's no other elementary school there,
Right.
right?
You said it was Candelo?
Candela. It's just across from Sorrento, really. Maybe a little bit further north.
So what was your question again? Great, Mr. Buchanan, what was your question again? Ms. Bob?
Candelo South, I've got it in here. It is,
I was just curious, I mean, I didn't realize 500 homes were going into Sorrento, and then how many are going into Candela?
It's a total of 1,464
In Candela?
in Candela.
But that's
South.
both the north and the south
Oh,
section.
okay,
total.
Okay.
Remember that when we're doing Terrell Elementary, it's grabbing majority of all the north side
Oh.
of Candela. So Bentley will be Sorrento, Candela South, where it will continue to grow in. But also we're pulling those neighborhoods off of 723 that currently go to Bentley, that will go into elementary school 35. So that we're continuing to pull enrollment off Bentley so that it can absorb that enrollment of those new
Okay.
homes around it.
One of the things that we do is we funnel all of our information into Greg's planning software. So then he's able to take advantage of these quarterly updates, see the data moving into his system, so then he can do facility planning with the forecasted housing information. But it is changing. That's the one thing that I think really puts us in a good spot, is that we're looking at this data every quarter because it is pretty significant how quickly it can change. I was working in this industry, you know, with school districts back in 2007. When the great housing crash happened, we turned the flip on our projections rather quickly because of what we were seeing. We haven't seen anything. The one thing about this housing market that is different is the buyers are more resilient or healthier. So we don't have that kind of financing problem that we had in 2007. But us watching the market very quickly allows us to turn those projection knobs rather quickly as well.
You good? All right, sir.
So just a real quick review of your enrollment history. The yellow shaded cell is the largest grade per year. The green shaded cell is the second largest grade per year. You'll notice this year's fall number was 44,385, which was up about 4.5%. You'll see a little bit of a softening in your elementary growth. One of the things that I would point out is on the right side of that table on the bottom, the elementary column, you can see the 2021-22 year elementary grade levels grew about 10%. Last year it grew about 7%. This year it grew about 5%, about 4% at your middle school grade levels. We kind of put all those together, 6 through 8. Your high school was right at 1. 90% of our clients at the high school level see growth less than 1. So again, it's early graduations for some districts. There is some that leave in 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. And so you're seeing steady growth and holding your high school numbers, which you're in rare company for that. Here's a look at the projections by grade level. Then I'll get into the campus projections. So I'm being a little cautious. So this number is conservative on next year's number. Because of these interest rate issues, the inflationary challenges that we see with the economic conditions, many times the CFOs love that I'm conservative for the 1 year, whereas the HR people are not as happy about a conservative forecast. So we're trying to find that sweet spot to where I do believe that you're easily going to grow get to 46,174. You'll notice I start to pick it back up. So again, our economists are telling us that we're likely going to see the interest rate go down in 2025. Following the election, we tend to see some optimism. No matter who wins, we'll see some optimism following the election that it's over. And then we'll see that interest rate possibly drop back down, which then we think the housing market will pick back up and get back to those numbers where we're at that 4,500, 4,800 homes per year, which means you're going to get back to growing about 2,000 kids per year. I don't like to be conservative with my long-range forecast because that can make facility planning challenging. So I'm a little conservative in the short term, not as conservative long-term. Here's the numbers at the campus level. A lot of numbers on this slide. You'll notice you've got several campuses that are going well over 1,000, but I also know you're opening campuses. Greg's got a plan that's going to help relieve these with the opening of your new schools. And so again, this data is being funneled into his software to help him with his attendance zone planning. What bottom line for me on this is you're easily growing an elementary worth of kids every year. So the elementary total is changing over 800 kids per year. So you're going to be needing to build multiple buildings, I don't know if this is good news or bad news, for several more years. At the secondary level, we've got it broken down by your different campus configurations. You can see, bottom line, the middle school is a need to open a middle school. About every other year is the middle school need. High school could be the need about every third or fourth year is basically, you're growing about that much at the middle school and high school levels. I'll do key takeaways and then be ready to go back and answer some more questions. This year, Lamar CISD added more than 1,900 students. It's a little bit lower than what we've seen the previous 2 years. Groundwork is underway on over 3,400 lots, so the developers have not slowed down. We are forecasting that you're going to add roughly between 3,700 to 4,200 new homes annually for the next 2 to 3 years. I think the reality is it's going to grow longer than that, but right now we're seeing about a 2 to 3 year window in that range. We do believe your enrollment in 5 years is going to get to about 55,100 students, and in 10 years you're going to eclipse 65,700 students. And again, for me, it's not a matter of if the numbers are going to happen, it's a matter of when are the numbers going to happen. You still have a growth horizon of more than 10 years. Your growth horizon is likely in that 15 to 20-year horizon. I'd be happy to go back and answer any questions.
So trustees, we know it's a lot of information, and so the great thing that attracted us in the RFQ process with Bob was he can do this every quarter. And so now, as he's tracking certain things, if we say this development is on track to have, 1,000 homes by a certain period of time, and then next quarter, we can see that it's on track or it's not. And so then that helps us, gives us more data points to make sure that we can time these things. And so we know all this, we don't have a crystal ball, so we can do the best we can to guesstimate how fast things are moving. So Bob's position is to give us as much data as possible so we can make those decisions as accurate as possible.
And you can call us at any time. There's no additional fees for how many times you call us or meetings that I come to. We're a resource to help you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Pleasure to be here.
All right, trustees, a couple months ago, we talked about master plan principles. And so we told the board that we would go back and we would look into that. We would look into that and we would adjust that depending on the level of growth around our district. And so Mr. Buchanan is here to talk about a new master plan principles that we'll bring forward for your approval in the near future.
Good evening, Board Trustees and Dr. Nivens. Tonight, we will bring forth a discussion about our master plan principles. Again, just reminding the Board of Trustees that in May of 2003 is when the Board of Trustees adopted, and then it was updated in February 15th of 2023 to 800, 860, 12, 50, and 2,500. We'll be looking at the growth models that we currently have within our district. We really broke them down into no growth, which is really 100. If any one elementary school attendance zone within that area was growing less than 150 homes or less, plus had 2 or more elementary schools with 0 growth, we put it in the no growth area. High growth was anywhere between 150 annual starts to 300, and then hyper growth was 300 or more annual starts within a zone. And what we did was we took our no growth, which is 1,900 for the high school, 950, 475, and the elementary schools pretty much stay the same no matter what growth area we're in. That allows us to keep those prototypes in place. And all we do is change the middle school, junior high, and high school number to accommodate for those growth areas. So again, this is what we just talked about of the different growth areas. Is one elementary school with 150 or less annual home starts, 2 or more elementary schools with 0 new home starts. High growth is one elementary school between 150 and 300 annual new home starts. Hyper growth is 2 or more elementary school zones with 300 or more annual new starts. So what does this look like, taking these and laying them over our current facilities that we have. Both the blue and the red track are in the no-growth area. Right now, they have each one of them only have one housing development that's right at 100, one has 111, and the blue track has 3 elementary school zones with 0 annual new home starts, and the red track has 2 with 0. So this is what it would look like. Basically, we wouldn't have to make any changes other than possibly adding a single classroom to both Lamar Consolidated High School and Terry High School to meet those growth pattern areas. Are there any questions about those 6 campuses? So the next area of possible impacts to high-growth areas, currently this would be the GO track and the new track that we would have. We don't have a color for it for Tomas. The only changes we'd have to currently make is Briscoe is currently at 1,225. We'd have to add 3 additional classrooms there. And for Banks Junior High School, we would have to add 2 additional classrooms to that. And these campuses would already meet the parameters that we're laying out within those high-growth areas. The other would be the maroon and silver track. Again, it's the junior high schools that we would have to add 3 classrooms apiece to those. But the high school, with that new high school additions that we have, and our middle schools would meet those growth patterns. Then it changes when we get into possibly the hyper growth. I left Tomas here as well, depending on, because it's on the border, depending on how that rezoning goes. For Forster High School, we're already there with the addition that we put on there, but Lehman would need 13 additional classrooms, Roberts would need 5. Looking at Tomas Banks and Bilstein Middle School, we would have to add 20, 12, and 5 to those campuses to be able to meet that growth, depending on how that zoning flushes out in May.
Tomas High School's high school number 7. What's the timeline for high school number 8 to open? Because it's funded from the bond,
Yes, sir. Our high school number 8 will open in the fall of 2027.
2027. So would those numbers for Tomas and Fulsher possibly, they would be adjusted by then, I would assume?
Well, when we look at those areas right now, Tamaron has 768 new annual starts. Lindsay has 347. Huggins has 752, and Morgan has 374. So even if you were to split those in half, you would still have 2 high growth, possibly hyper growth areas, because two of those elementary schools would be growing more than 300 home starts a year. So even dividing those 4 up, you would still have 2 hyper growth areas up in the Fulsher area. And then this is what we currently have for the programming for secondary 8, even though we haven't started yet. And these are the increases that we would have to do, basically the same as we would have to on the other campuses as well.
So in order to do this, we would have to have a bond to pay for the increase in size?
Yes, I mean, some of them, like Lamar High School, Terry, if we're only adding 1 classroom, we might be able to find that somewhere within some project savings that we may have. But yes, ma'am, these that we're talking about, 2013-5, it would have to be part of another bond and growth plan to address those.
When would that need to be done for high school number 8, time-wise?
Fall of '25 would probably be the latest that we could do something to be able to.
And then for Tomas and Banks, it would need to be this fall?
Yes, so, well, not even this fall, because if we pass it in the fall, we won't get funding till February, and then we have to have it open and ready. Yes, ma'am.
So when would we have to do that?
So if we did it in the fall '25, we'd have to come back to those campuses and just add those to those campuses.
But I'm saying for Banks and Tomas, could we not do it this fall? And still be able to add to the schools as they're being built, instead of coming back when students are there and building?
If we pass a bond in November of '24, we won't get money for it till February '25, and have to complete the building by May of '25 for it to open up in August. So I could start it, but those additions may not be open until the fall of '26.
But that's only if we have the capacity to do that.
Yes.
And
funding
so, you
capacity.
know, what I want, you know, the community to hear is, you know, we could pass a bond. First off, when you start talking about these numbers, it drives the value of the bond up, right? And so we know that some of our voters get sticker shock. And so that's one thing. The second thing is to make sure that we work with Jill and our financial advisor to make sure that we can afford that. Because, we may not be able to go out for a bond when we want to because we may not have the capacity and tax rate to do that because we still have to be able to pay for it. And so all those things are intricate details. And so I don't want folks in the community saying, y'all just go out for a bond, we'll support it, and then you'll go build a school. It doesn't work that way because we have money that we have to have to be able to do that, to build a facility. On the other side of that is we have our M&O tax rate that pays for salaries that the state forces us to reduce every year. And so after we open the building, we still have to be able to staff it. And so we're talking about two different tax rates and two different pots of money. And so we have to make sure that we can build the building first and pay for it with our INS tax rate. But also now we have to make sure we can fund it and staff it and open it with people. And the state's is forcing us to compress our M&O tax rate every year. So that's why every time I get a chance, I would say, make sure that you're talking to your elected officials, the governor and lieutenant governor, to make sure that we are getting the funding that we need to be able to keep up with the growth that we have. And so certain parts of our district, we are a hyper-growth school system. And so we need to have funding for a hyper-growth school system. If not, we'll continue to have, husky villages where you have the portables are larger than the actual building itself. And so it's a million-piece puzzle that we have to work through. And so there's a lot of conversations that we have to have. And so our community has to get engaged with that as well and have the conversations.
I was over here writing notes during the demographic report, and I think I like that we're saying this now because publicly we need to say that the state doesn't give us money to build a building. So the state does not give it. There is no lump sum. There's no magic pot of money because with all of our leveling conversations, we're saying people are asking us, well, just build buildings, just build a campus. Well, that's not how that works. And so, the last election we had for our school district, like District 4, District 5, and District 7 elected new trustees, or we had an incumbent that stayed. District 4 had a 5.45 percent voter turnout. So out of 19,000 registered voters, only 1,000 voted. District 5 has 19,000 registered voters, 498 people voted. And District 7 has 22,000 registered voters and 1,600. So 7% of the people actually got out and voted. So that's how we build campuses. That's how we build buildings, is by people showing up. That's what pays for that. So publicly, we need our voters to be engaged, to show up and vote, because we had some bonds that failed because people didn't show up to vote.
And the other thing I was going to say, if you go back, when you're saying classrooms, this is so we can get all the students inside the brick and mortar and not into portables, correct?
Yes, sir. Our goal is to get out of the portable business.
And that's what because they're going to say, well, where are those kids now? Well, they're in portables.
That is correct.
Now, and go back to 8, when we voted on 8, high school number 8, I thought we already voted to increase that school. Is it supposedly going to start for 2,500 or 3,000?
We voted to have that open up just like Tomas at 2,575.
Okay,
The only vote that we had to go to 3,075 was just Fulshire.
Just
High School.
Fulshire.
Yes, ma'am.
so to enlarge that up to 375, it would have to take a bond to add on to that school before it even starts being built.
That's correct.
Okay.
Very similar to what we did to Tomas.
Also, can I ask, with the portables that we have, do we own the portables or we rent them?
We own them.
Oh,
Also, to piggyback onto what you were saying is, I think we've probably all heard or seen on social media a lot of comments like the county and others need to stop allowing development to happen. They can't. There is no way to stop development. We can't tell developers they can't build homes and they can't build apartments. We can't do that. It's allowed. So if children are in our community, we have to educate them. We have to figure out a way to build schools and educate kids. So just so that's known, we have to figure it out.
and that we can't, in the same, what you were talking about, we also can't force developers to sell
Yeah,
us
we
land.
can't. Yeah, we
Certainly
can't.
wouldn't give us the land, but we
Right.
can't force them to sell it either.
Right.
So all these
We have to
neighborhoods are being
figure it out.
built, and yet they don't care about elementary schools, because that's not their problem. They're in the housing business, not the
Right.
education business.
And they would rather sell it to, they would rather put homes on it than put a school on it, most of them.
and they're gonna advertise the schools so they can build houses. And so,
Right.
and I know it's also election time and primary time for our state reps. And so one of the things I've been doing is speaking to the ones that are, put their name in the hat and say, okay, this is one of our legislative priorities, is we've got to be able to manage. We'll never control the growth, but we got to be able to manage and be proactive and think about the growth. And if we could have the state's help to come in and guide that, we've got to advocate for that as well, so.
Another thing I just want to add for public consumption is, as we talk about, like, what's on the slide right now, we're talking about, 38 classrooms, which is a considerable amount of money, right? So that goes into a bond. So say, for instance, our next bond, we're talking about retrofitting, high schools and adding classrooms. And so that's already a large number. We still have campuses in our district that need quite a bit of support, quite a bit of refurbishment. I mean, just, some new buildings that, if possible. And so what we have to do as administration is bring it to the board a comprehensive plan on how we're going to attack all these over a long term. This is not going to be fixed overnight. And so I just want the public to understand, we can't go out for a bond whenever the board calls it, and then we pass a bond and all this is fixed overnight. And so this is going to be a long-term fix to the issues that we're having because we are a hyper-growth school system in certain areas. And so people are still coming faster than we can build. And so I just want to make sure people know that, because when we passed a bond, even when we passed it this last, November 22, the very next day, Greg and the bond crew had all of our bids out, and we were moving dirt within a couple of months. And so some of those buildings are still being built right now. They're not open. And so there's a lot of folks that are not patient enough to wait. The buildings are coming, but the building doesn't happen overnight. The plan is here, the plan's in place. These things don't happen overnight. And so we have to be patient and know that we have a plan in place. So what I implore the community to do is get involved in the conversations, watch the board meetings, ask the questions, and be patient. And when you see misinformation, we need you to help us correct misinformation. We need you to help us correct misinformation. And so even if the board goes out for another $1.5 billion bond, most of that is going to be for new construction. We still have to address our current buildings. And so that's going to inflate that price. And so we have to have a plan, because we know we can't go out to the community for a $3 billion bond to do it all, right? So we have to have a comprehensive plan over years. And so what we have to do is make sure we communicate what that plan is over time and build people's awareness and educate them so they can understand exactly what's coming forward.
And that's why I'm glad now that we're going to have the demographers quarterly, because truthfully, I've been here a long time. You pass a bond, it's 2 or 3 years later that you see the fruits of your labor. That's just a reality. And if we see something, we can try to take care of it now. But like you said, we go out for a bond, we see where the problems are. We're not going to be able to solve some of those problems for a few years down the line. It's not like we don't want to. Everything takes time. And that's why when people are not involved with our bond process or understand, then it pushes us to work real hard to deal with, like you said, Ms. Bronsell, we have to educate every child that comes in, no matter where they are, and do the best we can and make sure they have the best education possible. And so we need everybody to listen and understand that we're doing it, we're trying. We're not trying to hurt families or hurt communities, we're trying to do the best for all the kids.
So trustees, we'll bring this back as a future action item and as an action item in the near future for you to approve. And then we definitely want this approved before we start, planning for the next bond, so then we can make sure we plan appropriately and have a long-range plan in place for facilities.
What, do you have firm numbers you'll modify that and bring back to the board? Did we see those on the screen? You're gonna bring what back to the board? I guess I'm a little confused on.
This plan, like the numbers, so you go back to.
The master plan principles.
Yes, go back to that slide. So that's the master plan principle. So explain that one more time, Mr. Buchanan.
So what we have is, you have the no-growth area, which has an elementary school within that zone. Any annual starts for an elementary school within those color track zones have 150 annual new home starts or less, plus a minimum of 2 elementary school zones with 0. So you have a minimum of 150 new homes, and you have at least 2 of those zones, elementary school zones, that have no new home starts. So you're figuring those are going to age out. That kind of mitigates any growth between that area. The high growth would be between a minimum of 1 elementary school zone with 150 to 300 new annual home starts. So that's what Mr. Templeton was describing as a fast growth area. So that's what we were going to leave, that high growth there. And then our hyper growth is the ones that have those elementary school attendance zones with 300 or more annual home starts. And like I said, currently, we only have 1 that fits that, and that's the purple track, and it has 4 that meet that criteria.
So this will be our new master plan principle. So then we know if we're gonna build a school in a certain part of town, we know the size that it needs to be.
Can we continue to use the same plans and just tweak them for the area, or do we have to go and make brand-new floor plans for the schools for the high-growth areas?
So for any of those additions that we currently have, we have the prototype that we currently have, that's Tomas will be the last secondary zone that we have that. So we have that program, because we're doing it at Fulshire, it's the same floor plan, to be able to extend it those additional seats that we need there at those complexes. Now, high school secondary 8 is a brand-new, ground-up construction, so it'll be a brand-new prototype. What we'll do is, if the board passes this, it will have all 3 of these be part of the prototype.
Okay.
So we'll lay it out for 1,900, and then if it falls within the area, we add these blocks to it. If it falls within a hyper-growth area, we add these additional blocks. So that's the way we'll plan out those prototypes for those facilities, is to be able to meet all 3 of these growth patterns.
And so that same prototype can be used throughout our community and tweaked by the area that they're going in,
That's correct.
so which saves us money in the long run.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
So like one last comment that he said earlier, Lamar CISD is the #1 ranked by annual closings. That includes multifamily. Again, saying it for the public. We have 87 active building subdivisions right now in our district, 87. And we have 30 that are future.
Okay, Ms. Johnson, is there any public participation? It is 6:38 PM, and we are adjourning to closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code Sections 551.071, 551.072, 551.074, and 551.082, the Open Meetings Act, to discuss personnel, land acquisition, or consultation with our attorney. We're now back in open session. It is 7:16 PM, and we have a quorum. The meeting is adjourned. It is 7:16 PM.